The incident report sat on Marcus Thorne's desk like an accusation written in blood. 5 pages, clinical language trying to sanitize violence that no words could make clean, 3 nannies hospitalized, 2 guards requiring reconstructive surgery, 1 tutor missing half his ear, the cartilage torn away with the precision of a scalpel wielded by shaking hands. But it was the final paragraph that made Marcus's blood run cold. The healer's handwriting, usually steady, had degraded into something jagged and uncertain, technique consistent with close quarters combat training. Specifically, the subclavian artery bite taught in SEER school. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The kind of training that took Marines months to master. The kind of killing technique you learned when regular combat skills weren't enough. His son was 7 years old. Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes until stars exploded behind the lids. The pressure didn't help. Nothing helped. Not the therapists who'd lasted 3 days maximum before quitting. Not the medications that turned his boy into a zombie without touching the rage underneath. Not the prayers Marcus whispered into the dark when he thought no one could hear a broken alpha begging God for answers that never came. The office door opened without warning. Wade Sullivan stood in the threshold, all 240 pounds of former Marine sergeant filling the frame like he still owned every room he entered. The prosthetic below his left knee clicked against hardwood, a metronome of shared history. Afghanistan, the firefight that had taken Wade's leg and given Marcus the scars he wore under his shirt, the ones that ached when storms rolled in. Your boy bit through a nanny's thumb this morning. Wade's voice carried no judgment, just the flat recitation of facts that came from too many effort. After action reports, clean through, she'll keep the thumb, but she won't be using it the same way again. Marcus didn't look up. Couldn't. If he met Wade's eyes, he'd see the thing neither of them wanted to name. The question that followed Marcus like a shadow. What kind of father raises a monster? The kind who wasn't there when it mattered most. The memory came unbidden, brutal in its clarity. 4 years ago, Marcus at the northern border negotiating territory disputes with a neighboring pack, playing alpha politics while his world ended 60 miles south. Sarah, his mate, former Marine Corps lieutenant. The woman who taught him that strength came in forms the Corps manual never covered. She'd been home with Ethan, age 3, when the rogues came. 3 of them, massive, scarred from lives spent taking what they wanted. They'd wanted pack intelligence, defensive positions, numbers, patrol routes, information that would have gotten good wolves killed. Sarah had given them nothing but violence. The evidence suggested she'd taken down 2 before the third, bigger than the rest, had clamped jaws around her throat and compressed until the light left her eyes. But here was the thing that haunted Marcus in the small hours when sleep finally came. Here was the detail that turned his dreams into horror shows. Ethan had been there, under the kitchen table, 3 years old and watching his mother die in 4-minute increments of desperate struggle. The third rogue, the killer, had turned toward that table, had caught the scent of young wolf, small and breakable, easy prey. Except Ethan hadn't been prey. The medical examiner's report had been clinical, precise. The rogue had died from exsanguination due to catastrophic damage to the left subclavian artery. Teeth marks consistent with juvenile wolf dentition. Angle of attack suggesting the victim had been standing, the attacker low to the ground. Defensive wound pattern absent, implying the fatal bite had been the primary and only strike. A 3-year-old boy had killed a full-grown rogue wolf with a single bite to a pressure point that most trained fighters couldn't find in the chaos of combat. And then he'd sat next to his mother's body for 72 hours, waiting for his father to come home from pack business that suddenly seemed obscenely unimportant. Marcus had found them there. Sarah cold, Ethan covered in blood that had dried to rust. The boy's gray eyes, so like Marcus's own, had been empty. Not crying, not screaming, just empty, like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything that made him human and left behind something that knew only survival and the terrible mathematics of killing. Ethan hadn't spoken since. Not one word in 4 years. Until this morning, Wade continued, his tone shifting to something gentler, the voice he used when approaching wounded animals. The nanny said he was laughing when he did it, not cruel, just pleased, like he'd solved a puzzle. The implications sat between them. A child who found satisfaction in violence wasn't having tantrums, wasn't acting out from trauma. He was operating on instinct, the kind that got carved into the nervous system when you learned at 3 years old that hesitation meant death. The pack council wants him institutionalized. Wade moved into the office, the prosthetic clicking with each step. They voted this morning, 8-4 in favor of sending him to a facility in Montana that specializes in wolves with severe behavioral issues. Over my dead body. The words came out harder than Marcus intended, sharp enough to cut. That's what I told them. Wade settled into the chair across from the desk, the leather creaking under his weight. Told him the boy's not broken, he's a soldier without training. Give him a commander who speaks his language. I've tried every therapist in 3 states. Marcus finally looked up, meeting his best friend's steady gaze. They all quit, said he's beyond their scope of practice. One told me point blank that she feared for her safety. Because you keep hiring civilians. Wade leaned forward, elbows on knees. What Ethan needs isn't someone who'll pity him or try to talk about feelings. He needs someone who understands that when you've killed to survive, you don't forget it. You don't therapize it away. You learn to carry it. And where exactly do I find someone like that? The question came out bitter, exhausted. Wade smiled, the expression carrying secrets. Funny you should ask. The Pack Gardens occupied 5 acres on the southern edge of territory, tucked against the tree line where cultivated order gave way to wild growth. Marcus had walked these paths 1,000 times, usually late at night when sleep proved impossible, and movement was the only answer to the restlessness that lived in his bones. He knew every flower bed, every stone bench, every curve of the winding trails that Sarah had designed before Ethan was born. He'd avoided this place for 4 years, too many ghosts. But Wade walked with purpose, leading him deeper into the gardens toward the rehabilitation enclosure where injured animals were brought to heal before released back into the wild. The scent reached Marcus first. Wolf, yes, but underneath something else. Gunpowder residue, the particular soap issued by the Department of Veterans Affairs. And beneath that, older, the chemical signature of burns that had healed but never fully faded. She was kneeling into the grass, hands gentle on a red-tailed hawk that should have been fighting, should have been tearing at her with talons capable of crushing bone. But the bird sat calm under her touch while she examined the splinted wing with the focused attention of someone conducting surgery. Her scars were immediate, impossible to ignore. The right side of her face looked like melted wax that had cooled in waves, the tissue puckered and shiny where fire had consumed the original skin. The damage continued down her neck, disappearing under the collar of her work shirt, reappearing on both forearms in patterns that spoke of intense heat and the terrible choices made when burning to death wasn't an option. She looked up at their approach, brown eyes, warm despite the trauma written across her skin. No fear in them, no submission, just calm assessment, the kind of look Marcus recognized from the mirror. Someone who'd seen the worst and survived it. Alpha, her voice was quiet, respectful without being servile. She released the hawk carefully, watched it hop to a nearby perch. You looking for something or just supervising? Wade made the introductions. Claire Ashford, this is Alpha Marcus Thorne. Marcus, this is the woman I told you about. She stood in one fluid motion, no wasted movement, and something in Marcus's tactical awareness cataloged the efficiency, military bearing, weight balanced, hands loose but ready. She wasn't acting submissive, she was standing at parade rest. At ease, civilian. Marcus made it in order. Testing. Claire didn't relax. Civilians don't stand at parade rest, Captain. The rank hung between them. Marcus hadn't been called captain in 6 years, not since his discharge from the Marine Corps. She'd done homework, or recognized the signs. Either way, she just revealed more about herself than her mouth had spoken. It's Alpha now. Yes, sir. But you'll always be captain to those of us who served. The file on Claire Ashford was thin. Arrived 6 months ago. Took work in the gardens. Low-ranked Omega. Kept to herself. No disciplinary issues. No pack bonds. Just quiet work and the kind of competence that made her invisible because she never caused problems. But the file didn't mention military service. Didn't mention the scars that spoke of combat and its aftermath. Didn't mention eyes that assess threats with the automatic precision of someone trained to survive ambush. Wade tells me you're good with wounded things. Marcus gestured toward the hawk. I do what I can. Claire's expression didn't change. Animals that are hurt stop trusting. You can't force trust back. You have to show them, slow and patient, that not everything wants to hurt them. And wolves? Marcus pushed. You work with injured wolves? Sometimes. Claire's gaze sharpened slightly. But I'm guessing you're not here about the wolf I treated last month with the infected paw. My son. The words came harder than they should have. He's 7 years old and he bites people badly enough to require surgery. Every professional I've hired has quit. The pack council wants to institutionalize him. Claire was quiet for a long moment, her attention fully focused on Marcus in a way that felt like being seen through a scope. What does he need? I don't know. The admission tasted like failure. I'm out of options. May I see his file, medical records, incident reports, whatever you've got? Marcus had brought the folder, thick with documentation of 4 years of violence and failed interventions. Claire took it without comment, settled onto a nearby bench, and began reading. Her expression never changed, but Marcus watched her eyes track across the pages with the speed of someone trained to extract critical information from dense text. She spent 20 minutes reading. Marcus and Wade stood silent, giving her space. The hawk preened itself. Somewhere in the trees, a woodpecker hammered at bark. Normal sounds of a normal day, except nothing about this was normal. Finally, Claire closed the folder and looked up. Your son isn't feral. Every professional who's evaluated him says otherwise. Then they're wrong. Claire's voice carried absolute conviction. Feral implies animal instinct without control. What Ethan has is something different. He's a child soldier living in a combat zone that exists entirely in his mind. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a settling of pieces that had never quite fit before. Explain. Claire stood, handed back the folder. The incident reports all show the same pattern. Ethan attacks when he perceives threat, when someone moves too fast, when they touch him without permission, when they try to force compliance. These aren't random acts of violence. They're defensive strikes from someone who believes he's still under attack. He watched his mother die. Marcus's voice came out rougher than intended. And then he killed the thing that killed her. Claire's eyes held something Marcus couldn't quite name. Compassion, maybe, or recognition. Your son learned at 3 years old that hesitation means death, that violence, properly applied, means survival. And now he can't unlearn it because nobody's teaching him the next step, which is that killing is a tool, not an identity, that knowing how to fight doesn't mean you have to, that strength includes restraint. She met Marcus's eyes directly. Your son doesn't need someone to fix him, Captain. He needs someone to show him he's not alone in what he's carrying. And you think you can do that? I think I'm the only one in this pack who understands what it means to survive something that should have killed you, and then have to figure out who you are after. Claire's hand unconsciously touched the scars on her arm. I think your son recognizes predators, and I think he'll recognize someone who's been where he is. What's your background? Marcus kept his voice level. The file says you're a Garden Omega, doesn't mention military service. The file's not wrong, I'm a Garden Omega. Claire smiled slightly, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. But the file doesn't say I was 35 Mike, psychological operations specialist. Doesn't say I spent 14 months in Kandahar running source networks. Doesn't say my team called me the Whisperer because I could talk down insurgents without firing a shot. Why isn't that in your file? Because after my team died, the Army decided I was psychologically unfit for service. Claire's voice stayed steady, clinical. Post-traumatic stress disorder with survivor's guilt. Same thing they probably wrote about you after Sarah, I'd bet. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Don't. I'm not pitching, sir. I'm establishing credibility. You want someone who understands your son's trauma? I've counseled over 200 combat veterans at VA hospitals. But more than that, Claire's eyes held his, unflinching. I know what it's like to kill someone to survive, and I know what it's like to hate yourself for it afterward. The air between them felt charged, heavy with truths too large for the afternoon sunshine. Wade had been silent through the exchange, but now he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decision. She's right, Marcus. Your boy doesn't need another civilian with a psychology degree. He needs someone who's been in the shit and found a way out. Marcus studied Claire for another long moment. The scars, the military bearing she couldn't quite hide, the calm in her eyes that came from facing death and deciding to keep living anyway. She was damaged, yes, but damage wasn't the same as broken. Damage was just proof you'd survived something that tried to destroy you. When can you start? Now, if you'd like, Claire gestured toward the gardens around them. But I'll need a space to work with him. Somewhere he feels safe, somewhere without walls that feel like a cage. The private garden off the family quarters. Marcus made the decision quickly before doubt could set in. It's secure but open. Sarah designed it. He paused, the name still catching in his throat 4 years later. Ethan used to play there before. That'll work. Claire's expression softened slightly. But Captain, I need you to understand something. Progress won't be linear. There will be setbacks. And I can't promise he'll ever be the boy he was before. I don't need him to be who he was. Marcus's voice came out rough with emotion he didn't try to hide. I just need him to have a chance at being someone he can live with. Then let's give him that chance. The private garden was smaller than the main grounds. Maybe half an acre enclosed by stone walls that provided security without feeling like a prison. Sarah had filled it with native plants, created small grottos where a child could hide and feel safe. A fountain in the center provided white noise. The sound of water over stone that covered other sounds gave privacy. Marcus led Claire through the family quarters, aware of pack members watching from doorways and windows. An unknown Omega in the Alpha's private spaces would generate talk. Adding to that talk was the fact that he was bringing her to see Ethan, something no outsider had been permitted in months. Let them talk. Marcus was past caring about appearances. Ethan was in the garden, crouched in the shadow of an overgrown rose bush. 7 years old and small for his age, all sharp angles and 2 bright eyes that never stopped moving. His dark hair needed cutting, wild and uncombed despite the nanny's attempts at grooming. He wore clothes that had been clean this morning, but were now dirt-stained from whatever battles he'd fought against invisible enemies. The boy's eyes locked onto Claire the moment she entered the garden. Marcus saw his son's body tense, muscles coiling for fight or flight. The low growl started in Ethan's chest, warning that felt too old for his young throat. Claire stopped walking, didn't retreat, didn't advance. Just stopped 15 feet away and stood still. Her posture stayed relaxed, non-threatening. She didn't crouch down to child level, didn't try to make herself smaller or less intimidating. She simply existed in the space, giving Ethan time to assess. Marcus started to speak, but Claire raised one hand slightly. Silence. Let the boy decide. They stood like that for 5 minutes. 10. Ethan's growl never stopped, but it didn't escalate either. Claire didn't move, didn't speak, just waited with the patience of someone who'd learned that time was a tool like any other. Finally, slowly, Claire moved. Not toward Ethan, perpendicular, walking to a clear patch of ground near the fountain. She sat down cross-legged, her back to a section of wall, positioning herself so Ethan could see her, but she wasn't blocking his escape routes. Smart, Marcus thought. Tactical awareness even in child psychology. Claire pulled something from her pocket. For a moment, Marcus tensed, wondering if weapons were about to enter this equation. But what emerged was a piece of charcoal from the garden shed. She began drawing in the dirt, her movements deliberate and visible. Ethan's growl quieted. Curiosity, stronger than fear, pulled him incrementally closer. Claire drew what Marcus recognized as a tactical map. Simple. 3 positions marked in a triangle. Lines of sight, fields of fire, cover and concealment. She was drawing an ambush scenario, the kind of thing you'd find in a Marine Corps tactics manual. Ethan crept forward. 5 feet, 3. Close enough to see the drawing clearly. His small face furrowed in concentration, studying the diagram like it held secrets he needed to survive. Claire spoke for the first time since entering the garden, her voice pitched low and calm. This is an L-shaped ambush. Classic setup. 3-man team. The enemy comes down this path, here, and you've got overlapping fields of fire from these 2 positions. The third covers the back trail in case they try to retreat. Ethan sat down, not close enough to touch, but close enough that Marcus felt his heart crack open with hope. His son was engaging, actually engaging, with another person. Claire continued drawing, adding details. Fallback positions, secondary firing points, tactical considerations that assumed the people in the ambush wanted to survive and go home. But your team lead here, she tapped one position. He's exposed during magazine changes. If this was real combat, he'd be killed. Your mom would have caught that. Ethan's breath hitched. Marcus saw his son's small hands clench in the dirt. She was a good Marine, wasn't she? Claire's voice stayed gentle. Knew tactics, knew how to fight. Ethan's voice came out rough from disuse, barely above a whisper. She killed 2. Claire nodded. She did. And then, I killed 1. The words fell into the garden like stones into still water. You protected yourself. Claire met Ethan's eyes directly. That's not murder. That's survival. I liked it. The confession came out broken, the thing Ethan had been carrying for 4 years finally given voice. When he died, I was glad. I know. Claire's voice carried no judgment. When I killed the insurgent who threw the grenade that killed my team, I was glad too. And then I hated myself for being glad. That feeling doesn't make you evil, Ethan. It makes you human. Ethan stared at her, his gray eyes wide and wet. How do you know? Because I've been where you are, scared, angry, confused about why being alive feels wrong when everyone says you should be grateful. Claire rolled up her sleeve, showing the full extent of the burn scars. I got hurt saving people. It hurt so much I wanted to die. But I lived, and I had to figure out who I was after. Does it stop hurting? Ethan's voice cracked on the question. The physical pain, yes. The other kind? Claire paused, considering. It gets different. Not gone, but manageable. Especially when you find people who understand. Ethan looked at Marcus then, really looked at him for the first time in months. Dad understands. Your father carries his own weight. Claire glanced at Marcus. We all do. The difference is learning you don't have to carry it alone. Marcus watched from the edge of the garden, his throat tight with emotion he couldn't name. His son was talking. Actually forming sentences, expressing thoughts, connecting with another person. In 30 minutes, Claire had achieved what years of professional help couldn't touch. Wade appeared at Marcus's shoulder, silent as always. She's good. She's more than good. Marcus couldn't look away from the scene before him. She's exactly what he needed. What you both needed, Wade corrected quietly. When's the last time you talked about Sarah with someone who actually gets it? Marcus didn't answer. Couldn't. Because Wade was right and the truth of it felt like standing too close to a fire. Warmth and danger mixed together in ways that made his chest ache. In the garden, Claire had produced an MRE packet from somewhere. Meal ready to eat, standard military rations and waterproof packaging. She opened it calmly, the practiced movements of someone who'd eaten 1,000 of these in worse places than a peaceful garden. Your mom probably ate these. Claire pulled out the main course packet. Chili mac, not bad actually. She took a bite, chewed, swallowed. Showed Ethan it was safe. Then she set the packet between them, not offering directly but making it available. Ethan stared at the food for a long moment. Then moving slowly like he expected it to explode, he reached out and took it. Ate. His eyes never left Claire's face. You're safe here. Claire's voice held absolute certainty. I won't hurt you. I won't lie to you. And I won't leave unless you want me to. Promise? The word came out small, vulnerable in a way Ethan hadn't allowed himself to be in 4 years. I promise. They sat together as the afternoon sun painted long shadows across the garden. Claire didn't push for more conversation. Didn't try to force connection beyond what Ethan was ready to give. She simply existed beside him, a steady presence that asked for nothing and offered everything. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a dangerous warmth spreading through the cold places Sarah's death had created. This woman, scarred and damaged and carrying her own weight of impossible survival, was reaching his son in ways Marcus had failed to do. Was speaking a language Marcus thought he'd lost. And more than that, watching her patience and strength and unflinching honesty, Marcus felt the first stirrings of something he'd thought died with Sarah. Not just gratitude, not just hope for his son's recovery, but awareness of Claire as a woman, strong, capable, beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with unmarred skin and everything to do with the fierce compassion in her eyes. He pushed the feeling down. Inappropriate. She was here to help Ethan. Whatever Marcus felt was just projection, gratitude mixed with loneliness, nothing more. But the feeling didn't disappear. It settled in his bones like an ache, like the phantom sensation Wade described in his missing leg, present even when it shouldn't be possible. Wade noticed, of course he did. Battle buddies learned to read each other or they died. You're falling for her. Don't be ridiculous. Marcus kept his voice low. I just met her. And? Wade's expression held knowing. I knew my wife was it 30 seconds into our first conversation. When you've seen enough death, you recognize life when it walks past you. Marcus started to argue, but movement in the garden stopped him. Ethan had shifted closer to Claire, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The boy's hand, small and dirt-stained, reached out and touched Claire's scarred arm, tracing the damaged skin with the gentleness of someone handling something precious and fragile. How did you get brave again? Ethan asked. After you were scared. Claire was quiet for a moment, her own hand covering Ethan's. I met someone who showed me that being scared was okay, that being careful was smart, but that being alone all the time was its own kind of hurt. I'm always alone. Ethan's voice broke on the admission. Not anymore. Claire's fingers squeezed his gently. You've got your dad, you've got me now if you want, and you've got time to figure out who you're going to be. What if I'm bad? The question came out terrified. What if I'm like the thing that killed Mom? Then you'd be killing people for fun instead of crying about it. Claire's voice stayed steady. Bad people don't worry about being bad, honey. The fact that you're scared of what you might become means you're still good inside. We just have to remind you of that. Ethan leaned against her then, his small body finally relaxing after 4 years of rigid tension. Claire's arm came around him naturally, holding him like she'd been doing it forever. Marcus watched his son, his fierce, broken, beautiful son, accept comfort from someone who understood his darkness because she'd survived her own. And the warmth in his chest grew stronger, undeniable. The next 2 weeks fell into a pattern. Claire arrived at the garden each morning, spent 4 to 6 hours with Ethan, left when the boy's energy flagged. She didn't push, didn't demand, just showed up with consistent, patient presence that slowly convinced Ethan the world might contain safe spaces after all. She taught him things, not therapy, training, how to read terrain, how to identify strong defensive positions, how to think 3 moves ahead. Military tactics translated into child-sized lessons that gave Ethan tools to feel less helpless. But more than the tactical knowledge, she gave him permission. Permission to be angry, permission to be scared, permission to take satisfaction in his own survival. Without that meaning, he was broken beyond repair. Marcus found himself in the garden more often than necessary, officially supervising, unofficially watching Claire work with the focused intensity of someone learning a new language. She never raised her voice, never showed frustration when Ethan regressed into growling silence. She simply adjusted, adapted, found new approaches with the tactical flexibility of someone trained to think under pressure. He started staying after sessions ended, after Ethan was collected by one of the less terrified nannies, started finding excuses to talk with Claire about his son's progress. Those conversations evolved, broadened. Military experiences they'd shared, different wars but similar lessons. The particular way combat changed your relationship with fear. The isolation of being surrounded by people who couldn't understand what you'd survived. She was easy to talk to, easier than should have been possible for someone he'd known barely 3 weeks. But shared experience created bridges that regular connection couldn't match. Wade noticed, made pointed comments Marcus ignored. The pack noticed, whispered in corners about the Alpha spending too much time with the scarred Omega. Marcus didn't care. For the first time in 4 years, his son was healing. If that meant enduring gossip, he'd survive. But 3 weeks into Claire's time with Ethan, Helen Pierce called an emergency council meeting. The council chamber felt too small, too warm. 12 wolves in positions of pack authority, all watching Marcus with varying degrees of concern and judgment. Helen sat at the head, her silver hair pulled back severe, her expression carved from granite. This is about the Omega. Helen didn't waste time on pleasantries. Claire Ashford, you've given her unprecedented access to your son, to the family quarters, to pack security in ways that should concern all of us. She's helping Ethan heal. Marcus kept his voice level. For the first time in 4 years, my son is speaking, engaging, showing progress. I don't see the problem. The problem, Helen continued, is that we know almost nothing about her. She appeared 6 months ago with a thin file and no real references. Now she's embedded in your household. I had concerns, so I did some digging. Marcus felt cold settle in his gut. What did you find? Helen pulled out a folder significantly thicker than the original file. Claire Ashford, honorably discharged from the Army 5 years ago. Exemplary service record. 2 tours in Afghanistan as a psychological operations specialist. Wounded in an IED blast that killed her entire 12-person team. So she's exactly who she said she was. Marcus didn't see the issue, except for the 6 months between her hospital discharge and her appearance in our territory. Helen's eyes hardened. She went AWOL, Marcus, disappeared from the base hospital against medical orders. The Army listed her as a deserter before quietly changing the designation to medical discharge 6 months later. Where was she? Another council member spoke up, concern evident. That's what I want to know. Helen's voice carried accusation. Because wolves don't just vanish for 6 months without reason. What was she doing? Who was she working for? And why should we trust her with access to pack security in the Alpha's air? Marcus stood, letting his authority fill the room. I'll ask her directly. If there's something concerning in her past, she'll tell me. Will she? Helen's question hung in the air. Or will she lie like she's apparently been lying since she got here? The confrontation happened in the garden. Marcus found Claire there after the council meeting, sitting by the fountain while Ethan napped in a sunny patch nearby. She looked up at his approach, smiled, then saw his expression and the smile faded. We need to talk about Pakistan. Claire's face went carefully blank. Pakistan. Helen did a background check. Found the gap in your service record. 6 months unaccounted for. Marcus kept his voice low so as not to wake Ethan. She's asking questions I can't answer. So I'm asking you directly. Where were you? Claire stood slowly, her military bearing returning like armor. That's classified. You went AWOL. You hunted someone. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unspoken. Finally, Claire's shoulders dropped fractionally. His name was Rashid, Afghan insurgent, the bomb maker who killed my team. Army couldn't pursue him across the Pakistan border. Political complications, so I did. You went rogue. I went after the man who murdered 12 soldiers I'd sworn to protect. Claire's voice held no apology. It took me 4 months to find him, 2 more to get close enough. To kill him, to make sure he'd never build another bomb, to make sure other teams wouldn't die the way mine did. Claire met his eyes directly. I'm not proud of leaving base hospital. I'm not proud of what I became for those 6 months. But I won't apologize for making sure that bastard never hurt anyone else. Marcus studied her face, the fierce determination there, the complete absence of regret for the action, even if the method troubled her. This was warrior logic, the kind of moral calculus that made sense when you'd seen too many good people die for bad reasons. Helen thinks you're dangerous, that you can't be trusted. Helen's entitled to her opinion. Claire's voice stayed level. But I've been nothing but honest with you and Ethan. I told you I know what it's like to kill and hate yourself for it. This is what I meant. You killed a man in cold blood. I eliminated an enemy combatant who was actively planning attacks against American forces. Claire's eyes flashed. There's a difference. Is there? The question hung between them. Claire stepped closer, her scarred face tilted up to meet his gaze. You tell me, Captain. If you'd known where the rogues who killed Sarah were hiding, if you'd had the skills to reach them when the authorities couldn't or wouldn't, would you have let them live? Marcus felt the truth of it, hit like a fist to the chest. No, he wouldn't have. He'd have torn them apart with his bare hands and slept soundly after. Exactly. Claire's voice gentled. I'm not a monster, Marcus, but I'm not a saint either. I'm a soldier who did what soldiers do when the rules of engagement prevent justice. Movement from the garden path interrupted them. Helen approached, her expression cold and determined. Behind her, half the pack council. This wasn't a casual visit. Claire Ashford, Helen's voice carried formal authority. The council has voted. Given your history of unsanctioned violence and the concerning gaps in your service record, we find you unsuitable for continued work with the Alpha's heir. You have until sunset to leave pack territory. Number. The word came from an unexpected source. Ethan, awake now, standing between Claire and the council. His small face was set in lines too old for 7 years. She stays. Helen's expression softened slightly. Ethan, honey, this isn't your decision. She understands me. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. She doesn't lie. She doesn't say things are okay when they're not. She's the only person who's safe. Safe? Helen's voice carried doubt. She admitted to murder. She admitted to protecting people. Ethan looked at his father, like Mom did. Mom killed 2 bad guys. Claire killed a bad guy. That doesn't make them bad. The logic was simple, brutal, undeniable. From the mouth of a child who knew exactly what killing cost and meant. Marcus looked at his son, at Claire standing calm and unafraid despite the council's judgment, at Helen whose eyes held pain beneath the hardness, the grief of a woman who'd lost her own son to the invisible wounds of war. Decision time, trust or safety, the woman who'd reached his son or the council's concerns. Both valid, both carrying weight. Marcus made his choice. The council's vote is noted and rejected. His alpha command rolled through the garden. Claire Ashford has my complete trust. She stays. And more than that, he met Helen's eyes directly, letting her see the challenge there. I'm formally declaring my intention to court her. The words fell like grenades. Helen's face went through several expressions before settling on something between shock and fury. You cannot be serious. Deadly serious. Marcus moved to stand beside Claire. This woman has done more for my son in 3 weeks than 4 years of professionals accomplished. She's earned my respect and my protection. She's Omega, another council member spoke up. Lowborn, damaged. Damn right I'm damaged. Claire's voice cut through the murmurs. I've got scars you can see and ones you can't. I've killed and I've failed to save people I loved. But I show up every day and do the work anyway. If that makes me unsuitable, then your standards are broken, not me. Ethan moved closer, taking Claire's scarred hand in a small one. She's good. She makes me less scared. Helen stared at them. The scarred Omega, the traumatized child, the Alpha declaring protection and intent. Her jaw worked like she was chewing words too bitter to swallow. This is a mistake. Her voice came out quieter, almost sad. But I can see you're determined to make it. I am. Then I'll be watching. All of us will. And if she proves to be the threat I fear, Helen's eyes locked on Claire. I will remove you from this pack myself. Understood. Claire's voice held no fear. I'd expect nothing less. The council departed, leaving Marcus, Claire, and Ethan standing in the garden, while the fountain's white noise filled the silence. Marcus realized he was still standing close to Claire, close enough to smell the gardens on her skin, the faint scent of gunpowder that never quite faded from those who'd spent years around weapons. You didn't have to do that, Claire spoke quietly, her hand still held by Ethan. Defend me. Declare courtship. You barely know me. I know enough. Marcus met her eyes. I know you're brave enough to hunt your demons, strong enough to survive fire, patient enough to heal my son. That's more than enough. Courtship means intent toward mating. Claire's voice held something uncertain. That's not gratitude. That's commitment. I know what it means. They stood there, the three of them, while afternoon light painted gold across damaged skin and small faces and warriors' eyes that had seen too much. A family that shouldn't work. A broken man, a scarred woman, a traumatized child. But Ethan was smiling, actually smiling, his hand secure in Claire's. And Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Not just hope, not just attraction, but the possibility of building something new from the ashes of what had burned. Claire looked at him, and really looked, and he saw the moment she understood. This wasn't just about Ethan, wasn't just about healing his son. This was about two damaged people recognizing each other across the wreckage of their separate wars. Okay, her voice came out soft. Okay, let's try. And in a garden built by a dead woman for a son who had survived the unsurvivable, two warriors made a choice. To trust, to try, to see if broken pieces could fit together and make something whole. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time in 4 years, Marcus thought they might actually win. The emergency council meeting convened at dawn, when the air still held the bite of night and wolves were supposed to be at their sharpest. Marcus stood before the assembled leadership, aware that half of them wanted Claire gone, and the other half were waiting to see which way the wind blew before committing. Helen Pierce sat at the center of the council table, her fingers steepled, her expression the kind of neutral that came before verdicts. We have deliberated on the matter of Claire Ashford and her continued presence in this pack. The vote was close, 4 for immediate expulsion, 3 for retention pending further review. That leaves the decision to the Alpha. Marcus felt Wade's presence at his back, solid and unwavering as always. The right call here was complicated. Claire had admitted to hunting a man across international borders, had killed him though she'd framed it as eliminating a threat. The council's concerns weren't unfounded. She was damaged, secretive, carrying violence in her past that most wolves never touched. But she'd also reached at Ethan in ways no one else could, had given his son hope when Marcus had run out of options. And more than that, watching her work with focused patience and unflinching honesty, Marcus had felt something he thought Sarah's death had killed. The possibility of connection, of building something new without betraying what he'd lost. My decision stands. Marcus let his alpha authority fill the room. Claire Ashford has my complete trust. She remains in this pack with full privileges, and I'm formally declaring my intention to court her. The chamber erupted, Voices overlapping, some shocked, others angry. Helen raised her hand for silence and the noise died like someone had cut the power. You're courting an Omega. Her voice carried disbelief. A low-born, damaged Omega with a history of unauthorized violence. Do you understand what you're asking this pack to accept? I'm asking them to accept a woman who's proven herself brave, skilled, and devoted to helping those who need it. Marcus held Helen's gaze. I'm asking them to judge her by her actions, not her rank. Her actions include murder. Another council member spoke up, his tone sharp. Her actions include eliminating a confirmed enemy combatant who'd killed American soldiers and was actively planning more attacks. Wade's voice cut through the tension. With respect, I've read Claire's military file, the full one, not the sanitized version. What she did in Pakistan wasn't murder. It was the kind of mission we'd have green-lit if the politics hadn't gotten in the way. You're defending her because she's military. Helen's eyes narrowed. Because she speaks your language. But that doesn't make her suitable to be Luna. It makes her exactly suitable. Marcus leaned forward. This pack needs someone who understands strategy, who can think tactically, who won't break when things get hard. Claire Ashford is that person. And if you can't see it, that's your failure, not hers. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crack stone. Helen studied Marcus for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood. I vote to accept the Alpha's decision. Her words shocked the room. Not because I trust Claire Ashford. I don't. But because I trust Marcus Thorne's judgment. He's never led this pack wrong. If he says she's worth the risk, I'll give him the benefit of doubt. For now. The other council members exchanged looks. Slowly, reluctantly, they nodded agreement. The opposition hadn't disappeared, but it had been contained, for now. Marcus found Claire in the gardens an hour later, her hands deep in soil, working with the kind of focus that suggested she was thinking about anything except the plants. She looked up at his approach, dirt smudged across one scarred cheek. They let me stay. Not a question. She'd have heard if the verdict went otherwise. They let you stay. Marcus settled onto a nearby bench. Helen voted in my favor, said she'd give me the benefit of doubt. That's generous of her. Claire's tone suggested she didn't believe the generosity would last. She's not wrong to be cautious. Marcus watched Claire's hands move through the soil, competent and sure. You did kill a man. Whatever the justification, that's real. Claire was quiet for a moment, her attention apparently fixed on the rosebush she was tending. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of old decisions. His name was Rashid Khan, bomb maker. He'd killed my team with an IED that turned our convoy into shrapnel and fire. 12 soldiers, good people. The army couldn't touch him because he'd crossed into Pakistan and the politics made pursuit impossible. So you went alone. I went with what I had. Intel from contacts, training and infiltration, and 4 months of tracking. Claire's hands stilled in the dirt. When I found him, he was planning another attack, building devices that would kill more soldiers. I didn't hesitate. How did you do it? Marcus asked quietly. Sniper rifle, 800-meter shot. He never knew I was there. Claire finally looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes. Clean, professional, the way I was trained, and then I disappeared before anyone could ask questions I couldn't answer. The confession hung between them. Marcus thought about Sarah, about the rogues who'd killed her. If someone had told him where to find them, what he could do without consequences, would he have hesitated? No, he'd have torn them apart and slept soundly after. You did what needed doing. Marcus's voice came out rougher than intended. I understand that. Do you? Claire stood, brushing dirt from her hands. Because understanding and accepting are different things. You declared courtship, Marcus. That's not casual. That's intent toward mating. And I need you to know what you'd be binding yourself to. I know what I'm doing. Then you're braver than I thought. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. Or more damage than you want to admit. Maybe both. Marcus stood, closed the distance between them. All I know is that watching you with Ethan, seeing your strength and your patience, I feel something I thought died 4 years ago. Hope, connection, the possibility of building something that matters. Claire's breath caught. This is moving fast. Is it? Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat. We're both soldiers. We know that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Why waste time pretending we don't feel this? His hand cupped her scarred cheek, thumb tracing the damaged skin with reverent gentleness. Claire's eyes closed, a shudder running through her that had nothing to do with fear. I'm terrified. The admission came out whispered. Of this, of you, of wanting something I might destroy. Then we'll be terrified together. Marcus leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers, and we'll figure it out as we go. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable. Gentle at first, testing, then deeper as Claire's hands fisted in his shirt and pulled him closer. She tasted like coffee and determination, like someone who'd survived fire and decided to risk burning again. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads still pressed together. Marcus felt the mating bond stirring, not complete, but present, a thread of connection that would only strengthen with time and choice. This is insane. Claire's voice shook slightly. The council will never accept an Omega Luna, especially one with my history. Then we'll change their minds. Marcus pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Together. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal despite the underlying tension. Claire continued working with Ethan, their sessions in the garden producing steady progress. The boy spoke more freely now, his violence decreasing as he learned other ways to express fear and anger. He still had nightmares, still flinched at sudden movements, but the feral edge was smoothing into something more manageable. Marcus joined the sessions when he could, watching Claire teach his son tactical thinking as a framework for emotional regulation. Identify the threat, assess your options, choose your response. Military doctrine translated into child psychology, and it worked because Ethan understood that language. One afternoon, Marcus arrived to find them engaged in what looked like a military exercise. Claire had set up obstacles in the garden, created scenarios using toy soldiers. Ethan moved through each setup with focused concentration, explaining his tactical reasoning. Bad guys here? Ethan pointed to positions behind the fountain. I'm here with Mom. Dad's coming from this direction. If I run, bad guys catch me. If I fight, I get hurt. So I make them chase me toward Dad's position. Ambush. Claire nodded approval. That's called directing the enemy's movement. You're using terrain and timing to equalize the fight. Marcus felt his throat tighten, watching his son demonstrate strategic thinking that most adults never mastered. This was Claire's gift, not just healing Ethan's trauma, but giving him tools to transform fear into capability. After the session ended, Marcus lingered in the garden. Claire began packing away the toys, her movements efficient. You're teaching him to be a soldier. Marcus kept his voice neutral. I'm teaching him to think tactically. Claire looked up, her brown eyes steady. There's a difference. Your son spent 3 years operating on pure survival instinct. Now he's learning that he has options beyond violence or paralysis. I do trust you. Marcus caught her hand, pulled her closer. That's what scares me. Why? Because trusting you means admitting how much I need you. Marcus's voice dropped. And needing someone again, that's terrifying after losing Sarah. Claire's hand cupped his face. I'm scared too. Of this. Of us. Of wanting something so much that losing it would break me all over again. Then we'll be scared together. Marcus echoed his words from weeks before. More than the sessions with Ethan, Marcus found himself seeking Claire's company in the quiet hours. Evening walks along the pack's perimeter became ritual, a chance to decompress from the day's demands and simply exist beside someone who understood the weight of command. They talked about everything, about Sarah and Claire's fallen team, giving voice to grief that had lived too long in silence, about the wars they'd fought and the pieces of themselves they'd left on foreign battlefields, about the future they might build if they survived whatever was coming. Late-night strategy discussions in his office evolved into something more intimate. Sitting close on the leather couch, shoulders touching, sharing whiskey and tactical assessments in equal measure. Claire would lean into him, her head finding the hollow of his shoulder like it belonged there, and Marcus would wrap an arm around her, breathing in the scent of gardens and gunpowder that was becoming as essential as oxygen. They didn't rush toward physical intimacy beyond kissing. Both of them carried too much damage to approach that carelessly. But the emotional intimacy deepened with each shared moment. Each revealed vulnerability. Each time they chose honesty over self-protection. Wade noticed, made pointed observations Marcus pretended to ignore. You're falling hard and fast. I'm courting her. It's expected. Courting is flowers and formal dinners. Wade's expression held knowing. What you're doing is reconnaissance before full commitment. The warning proved prescient when Marcus found threatening messages carved into trees. Omega whore. Words meant to wound. He tracked down the culprits, three young wolves who thought tradition meant keeping omegas in their place. Claire handled it with grace. She stood calm during forced apologies, then offered her own. I'm sorry my presence caused division. Her voice was steady, but I won't apologize for being what I am. I'm not leaving. This pack has given me a home, and I'll fight to protect that. Marcus pulled her aside after. You shouldn't have to defend your existence. I know, Claire smiled sadly, but changing minds takes time. Same skills I use with Ethan. Besides, I've faced worse than hostile pack members. They talked about the wars they'd fought, Marcus's deployments to Fallujah and Helmand province, Claire's time in Kandahar running psychological operations against insurgents who knew the terrain better than American forces ever could. They compared scars, both visible and otherwise, learned the shape of each other's damage, and found it fit together in unexpected ways. Wade noticed, made pointed observations Marcus pretended to ignore. You're falling hard and fast. I'm courting her, it's expected. Courting is flowers and formal dinners. Wade's expression held knowing amusement. What you're doing is reconnaissance before full commitment. You're already decided. You're just waiting for her to catch up. Maybe. Marcus didn't bother denying it. She's worth waiting for. She is. Wade's tone turned serious. But be careful. The pack's watching, and not everyone's as accepting as Helen pretended to be. The warning proved prescient 3 weeks into the courtship. Marcus was reviewing perimeter reports when Wade burst into his office, his expression grim. We've got a problem. Wade spread a map across the desk. 3 attacks in the last week. All on our southern border, all following the same pattern. Marcus studied the map, tactical awareness kicking into high gear. The attack points formed a clear progression, each one probing deeper into pack territory. Recon in force. They're testing our defenses. More than that, Wade pointed to timing notations. Look at the intervals. 72 hours between each strike. Consistent, disciplined. This isn't random rogues looking for easy prey. It's military doctrine. Claire's voice came from the doorway. She'd entered without knocking, her expression tight. O-O-D a loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Someone with training is running these attacks. Marcus gestured her into the office. What are you thinking? Claire moved to the map, her fingers tracing the attack pattern. I'm thinking whoever's commanding these rogues learned tactics the same place I did. From people who know how to fight organized forces. This progression, it's textbook infiltration doctrine. Probe defenses, identify weaknesses, prepare for main assault. You recognize the signature. Wade's statement wasn't a question. I might. Claire's voice came out carefully neutral. But I need to be sure before I make accusations. Before she could elaborate, a sentry's howl split the afternoon. Emergency signal, attack in progress. Marcus was moving before conscious thought caught up, Wade and Claire right behind him. The southern border was chaos when they arrived. 6 rogues engaged with pack defenders, but these weren't the desperate, starving rogues that usually tested boundaries. These moved with coordination, covered each other's attacks, withdrew in good order when pressed too hard. Trained fighters. Marcus threw himself into the fight, his alpha strength turning the tide. Beside him, Wade fought with the economical brutality of someone who'd learned combat in places where hesitation meant death. And Claire, moving with lethal grace, took down a rogue twice her size using joint locks and pressure points that spoke of hand-to-hand training most wolves never accessed. The fight lasted 8 minutes. When it ended, 4 rogues lay dead, 2 captured, and pack losses were minimal. 3 wounded, none critical. Victory by any measure. But Marcus felt cold settle in his gut as he studied the captured rogues. They wore no identifying marks, carried no supplies that might reveal origin. Professional discipline that went beyond normal rogue behavior. Wade's expression mirrored Marcus's thoughts. These aren't random criminals. Claire crouched beside one of the captured rogues, her scarred hands gentle despite the violence minutes earlier. She tilted the wolf's head, studying something Marcus couldn't see. Then her face went white. What is it? Marcus moved closer. Claire's hands trembled as she showed him. A tattoo, small and easily missed, hidden behind the rogue's ear. Geometric pattern in dark ink. Specific design that meant nothing to Marcus, but clearly meant everything to Claire. This is Cain's mark. Her voice came out hollow. The insurgent cell I told you about. The ones who killed my team. This is their signature. You said you killed the bomb maker. Marcus felt pieces clicking together in ways he didn't like. I killed Rashid. Claire stood, her military bearing rigid. His brother Kane led the cell. I thought he died in a drone strike 3 months after Rashid. Intelligence said he was confirmed KYA. Intelligence was wrong. Wade's voice carried grim certainty. The captured rogue chose that moment to speak, his voice rough but clear. The whisperer. Kane said you'd be here. Said you thought you could hide by joining some American pack in the middle of nowhere. Claire's face could have been carved from stone. Where is he? Close. The rogue smiled, showing too many teeth. Close enough to watch. Close enough to take everything from you the way you took everything from him. Marcus grabbed the rogue by the throat, his alpha command rolling out. You'll tell me everything or I'll make you wish I'd killed you quick. But the rogue just laughed, a sound edged with madness. Too late, Alpha. The message is already delivered. She brought this to your door, and now everyone she cares about will pay the price. They secured the prisoners in the pack's holding cells, set additional guards, and convened an emergency war council in Marcus's office. Claire stood by the window, her posture rigid, staring out at territory that suddenly felt less secure. Talk to me. Marcus kept his voice gentle, despite the urgency thrumming through his veins. Tell me everything about Kane. Claire was quiet for a long moment, gathering thoughts or courage. Marcus couldn't tell which. Finally, she turned to face him and Wade. Kane wasn't Rashid's brother by blood. They were pack. An entire wolf pack that went rogue during the war, sold themselves as mercenaries to whoever paid. Insurgents used them for high-value targets, attacks that required supernatural strength and coordination. My team was hunting them for 8 months before they hit us. The IED that killed your team, Wade's voice held understanding. That wasn't random. It was targeted elimination. Claire's hands clenched. We'd gotten close. Too close. Rashid built the bomb. Kane planned the operation. 12 soldiers dead in 4 seconds of fire and shrapnel. I survived because I'd stepped away from the convoy to take a radio call. Survivor's guilt. Marcus recognized the weight in her voice. You blamed yourself. Of course I did. Claire's eyes held old pain. I was their intelligence officer. My job was to keep them safe, and I failed. So when the army couldn't pursue across the border, I did it myself. Spent 4 months tracking Rashid. When I finally found him, he was in Pakistan, planning another attack. I took the shot. And Kane swore revenge. Wade filled in the gaps. Found out you survived. Tracked you here. Claire nodded. I thought he was dead. The intel was solid, but if he's alive, if he's here, then this isn't just about territory or resources. This is personal. He's using your pack to hurt me. The implications settled heavy in the room. Marcus thought about the pattern of attacks, the progression toward pack center. If Kane was planning something larger, something beyond harassment, they needed to know what and when. We need intel. Marcus looked at Wade. Everything we can get on these mercenary wolves. Numbers, capabilities, known tactics. Already on it. Wade pulled out his phone. I've got contacts in military intelligence. They might have files on Kane's operation. Claire moved to the desk, pulled the map closer. If Kane's following his standard doctrine, the next attack will be larger. Not harassment, a statement. He'll hit something that matters. Like what? Marcus scanned the map, trying to think like an enemy commander. Like you. Claire met his eyes. He knows I'm here, knows I'm courting an alpha. Taking you out accomplishes 2 goals. Hurts me and destabilizes the pack. Classic force multiplication. Then we fortify. Set additional guards, vary patrol routes. Won't work. Claire's voice carried certainty. Kane's too good. He'll wait until we think we're safe, then strike when we're distracted. We need to flip the script. Make him react to us instead of the other way around. How? Wade asked. By giving him a target he can't resist. Claire's expression hardened. Me? Absolutely not. Marcus's alpha command made the windows rattle. You're not bait. I'm the only bait that matters. Claire didn't back down. He wants me. Let's use that. Set a trap. Draw him out. End this before more people die. The argument that followed was heated, tactical, and ultimately pointless because Claire was right and they all knew it. Kane wouldn't stop until he'd extracted his pound of flesh. Waiting just meant more pack members at risk. But before they could finalize any plan, Wade's phone buzzed. He read the message, his face going pale. What? Marcus felt dread coil in his gut. My contact got back. Sent over Kane's file. Wade looked up, his eyes haunted. The mercenary pack. They're not small time. Last confirmed count was 60 to 80 combat-trained werewolves, and they're all heading toward this territory. The numbers hit like a punch. Marcus's pack had 47 members, maybe 20 combat-capable. They were outnumbered 3-1 by professional soldiers who'd spent years fighting in the worst hellholes on Earth. When? Claire's voice stayed steady despite the odds. Intel suggests they'll be in position within 72 hours. Wade showed them the phone screen. They're mobilizing for full assault. Ethan's voice from the doorway made them all freeze. Then we need to get ready. The boy stood in the threshold, his gray eyes serious beyond his years. Marcus started to order him back to his room, but Claire's hand on his arm stopped him. Let him speak. Her voice was quiet. Ethan walked into the office with the deliberate steps of someone who'd made a decision. I heard what you said about the bad guys coming, about them wanting to hurt Claire. Son, this is adult business. Marcus tried to gentle his voice. Mom died fighting bad guys. Ethan's voice didn't waver. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She fought. Claire's teaching me the same thing. How to think tactical. How to be smart instead of just scared. Ethan, Claire crouched to his level. This is different. These aren't rogues. They're soldiers. I know. Ethan met her eyes. That's why you need every advantage. And I'm an advantage because Kane won't expect a kid to matter. That's his mistake. The tactical logic was sound, and it had made Marcus's blood run cold. His 7-year-old son was thinking like a soldier, weighing assets and vulnerabilities with the dispassion of someone trained to war. This was what Claire had taught him. How to think instead of just react. But it also meant Ethan understood exactly how dangerous this situation was. You're not fighting, Marcus made it an order. You and the other children will be evacuated to the northern bunker until this is over. Ethan's jaw set in stubborn lines Marcus recognized from the mirror. You need me. What I need is for you to be safe. Marcus's voice cracked. I can't lose you too. The rawness of the admission hung in the air. Ethan's expression softened, the soldier mask slipping to show the scared child underneath. You won't lose me. Ethan crossed to Marcus, wrapped small arms around his father's waist. But you can't protect me by keeping me useless. Claire taught me that. Being safe isn't about hiding. It's about being ready. Claire's hand found Marcus's shoulder, squeezed gently. He's right. Not about fighting, but about being ready. We evacuate the children, yes, but we teach them evacuation procedures. Escape routes. What to do if the bunker is breached. That's not using them. That's preparing them to survive. Marcus looked at his son, at the woman he was courting, at Wade, who'd been his brother in everything but blood for 2 decades. They were right, all of them. Hiding from hard truths didn't make those truths disappear. Okay. Marcus pulled Ethan close, breathed in the scent of his son, soap, and innocence, and the wild smell all young wolves carried. We prepare everyone. Combat-capable adults train for defense. Non-combatants drill evacuation. Children learn survival protocols. We've got 72 hours. Let's make them count. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of preparation. Wade organized defensive positions, turned packed territory into a maze of kill zones and fallback points. He worked with the kind of focused intensity that came from 2 decades of military experience, transforming civilian territory into tactical nightmare for any attacking force. Marcus watched Wade position claymore mines at choke points, string tripwires that would trigger flares and alarms, create overlapping fields of fire that left attackers nowhere to hide. Each defensive position had 3 fallback routes. Every strong point could be abandoned without leaving forces trapped. Standard military doctrine applied to werewolf warfare. These positions, Wade pointed to marks on the map. Primary defensive line here, secondary here, final stand at the pack house. We trade space for casualties, make them pay for every yard. How long can we hold? Marcus studied the defensive depth. Against 60 trained wolves? Wade's expression was grim. Maybe 6 hours if we're lucky and they're stupid. Less if Kane's as good as Claire says. Then we make those 6 hours count. Marcus felt the weight of command settle heavier. Every minute we hold is another minute for non-combatants to escape. Claire ran psychological operations, spread disinformation through channels she knew Kane monitored. She used her intelligence background to create false reports, plant suggestions that pack strength was double actual numbers, hint at reinforcements that didn't exist. Classic misdirection, trying to make Kane second-guess his intel. Marcus found her late one night in the communications room, surrounded by equipment and notes, dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. You need rest. He settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Can't. Claire's voice was hoarse from hours of radio work. Every hour I waste sleeping is another hour Kane has to refine his plan. I have to stay ahead of him. You can't outthink him if exhaustion makes you stupid. Marcus took the headset from her hands gently. 4 hours. That's an order. You can't order me. I'm not pack military. Claire's protest was weak, her body already sagging with fatigue. No, but I can carry you to bed and stand guard until you sleep. Marcus made it matter of fact. Your choice, walk or be carried. Claire's laugh came out, tired but genuine. You'd really carry me? Without hesitation. Marcus stood, held out his hand. Come on, warrior. Even soldiers need to recharge. She let him lead her to quarters, let him tuck her into bed with tenderness that made her eyes shine with unshed tears. Marcus settled in the chair beside the bed, prepared to keep watch. Stay. Claire's voice stopped him from pulling out tactical reports to review. Please, I sleep better when you're close. Marcus moved to the bed, settled on top of the covers fully clothed, his back against the headboard. Claire curled against his side, her head on his chest, and within minutes her breathing evened into sleep. He stayed awake, one hand stroking her hair, feeling the mating bond pulse between them with every heartbeat. She fit against him like she'd been designed for that exact space. And sitting there in the dark, listening to her breathe, Marcus made a silent promise. They would survive this. He would make sure of it. Because losing Claire now, after finding her, after learning to hope again, that wasn't acceptable. And Marcus drilled his wolves relentlessly. Most were civilians, teachers, and craftsmen who'd never expected to fight a war. But they learned fast, driven by the knowledge that everything they loved was at stake. He taught them basic tactics, how to move under fire, how to use cover effectively, how to aim for center mass because fancy shooting got you killed. Nothing complex, just the fundamentals that kept soldiers alive in combat. Wade handled weapons training, his drill sergeant voice ringing across training grounds. Trigger discipline, breath control, squeeze don't pull. Basic marksmanship that most wolves had never needed before, but would mean the difference between living and dying. Claire taught psychological warfare, showed pack members how to mess with enemy heads. Noise discipline to move silent as ghosts. How to use darkness and terrain to seem more numerous than they were. How to make attackers second-guess every decision. Helen surprised everyone by running evacuation drills with the non-combatants. The former Army nurse organized civilians with military precision, created protocols for getting children and elderly to safety, established fallback positions and rally points. Marcus found her after one particularly smooth drill, nodded approval. That was well done. I served in Vietnam at the tail end. Helen's voice held old memories. Field hospital near Da Nang. We ran triage drills until we could do them blind. Saved a lot of lives that way. She looked at Marcus, her expression softer than usual. You're Claire. She's good for this pack. Good for you. I was wrong to oppose her. You're allowed to be protective. Marcus appreciated the admission. We all are. I lost my son to war. Helen's voice went quiet. Not in combat, after. PTSD ate him alive until he couldn't take it anymore. Put a gun in his mouth 10 years ago. I saw Claire's scars, her history, and I thought she'd be the same. Another broken soldier who'd break others. But she's not broken, is she? Number. Marcus thought about Claire in the garden with Ethan, patient and steady and utterly unshakable. She's wounded, but wounds can heal. Break doesn't. Helen nodded slowly. Then you make sure she survives what's coming, because this pack needs her. And more than that, you need her. I can see it every time you look at her. I do. Marcus didn't bother hiding it, more than I've needed anything in a long time. Through it all, the courtship between Marcus and Claire deepened in ways that had nothing to do with formal gestures. They worked side by side, planning strategy, arguing tactics, finding in each other the partnership that only came from shared purpose and mutual respect. The mating bond grew stronger with each passing hour, not complete but present enough that Marcus could feel Claire's determination, her fear, her fierce protectiveness toward the pack that had given her sanctuary. On the second night, after drilling had ended and the pack had collapsed into exhausted sleep, Marcus found Claire on the roof of the pack house, staring out at dark territory. Can't sleep? He settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Too wired. Claire leaned into the contact, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. We've done everything we can. Marcus took her scarred hand in his. Whatever happens, we face it together. Claire turned to look at him, moonlight painting silver across damaged skin. I'm sorry I brought this to your door. If I'd known Kane was alive, I never would have come here. Then Ethan would still be feral, and I'd still be drowning in grief. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, kissed the scars gently. You didn't bring destruction, Claire. You brought hope. Whatever the cost, that's worth fighting for. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, like she was trying to pour everything she couldn't say into physical connection. Marcus responded with equal intensity, pulling her closer, losing himself in the taste and feel of her. The mating bond flared bright, demanding completion, demanding they seal what they'd both been dancing around for weeks. They broke apart, breathing hard. Claire's eyes held heat and longing and fear, all mixed together. After, her voice came out rough. After we survive this, I want to complete the bond properly. Not rushed because we might die, but chosen because we want to live. Deal. Marcus pressed his forehead to hers. We survive. We win. And then I make you mine in every way that matters. Promise me something else. Claire's voice dropped to whisper. If it comes down to choosing between me and the pack, you choose the pack. You choose Ethan. Don't ask me that. I have to. Her hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. You're alpha. Your duty is to your people first. If Kane gives you that choice, if he makes it me or them, you let me go. Claire, promise me, Marcus, her voice broke. Because I can't do this, can't love you, if I think my presence will make you compromise your responsibilities. The weight of command had never felt heavier than in that moment. But she was right. An alpha's duty was to the pack first. Always. No matter the personal cost. I promise. The words tasted like ashes. But I'm also promising this. I'll find a way to save everyone. I don't accept no-win scenarios. Claire's laugh was wet with tears. That's very Kirk of you. Damn right. Marcus pulled her close again. And Kirk always found a way to cheat impossible tests. They spent the rest of the night on that roof, holding each other as dawn painted the sky with colors that might be the last beautiful thing they ever saw. Not talking, not planning, just being together, storing up moments against the darkness that was coming. The third day dawned clear and cold. Wade's scouts reported movement on all borders. Kane's forces were in position. The assault would come soon, probably at dusk when visibility dropped, but wolves still had advantage over humans. Marcus gathered the pack in the main hall. 47 wolves looking to him for leadership, for hope, for the reassurance that they'd see another sunrise. He saw fear in their faces. Determination, too. These were his people, his responsibility. In a few hours, we'll face an enemy that outnumbers us 3-1. Marcus let his voice carry to every corner of the hall. They're trained soldiers. They're here for blood, and they won't stop until they get it. The smart move would be to surrender, give them what they want, hope for mercy. Silence greeted his words. Then Ethan's small voice from the front row. But we're not going to do that. Marcus smiled at his son. No, we're not. Because we're not fighting for territory or pride. We're fighting for home, for family, for the right to live free from people who think violence gives them power over others. He looked at Claire, standing calm and ready near the back. For the people we love and the future we want to build. And that's worth any price. Wade stepped forward. We've turned this territory into a meat grinder. Every approach is covered. Every retreat is a trap. They might outnumber us, but we know this ground. We make them pay for every inch. Claire moved to stand beside Marcus, her voice clear and steady. Kane thinks he knows me, thinks I'll break when people I care about are threatened. He's wrong. I've been broken before and I put myself back together, stronger. We all have. That's what makes us dangerous. The pack howled approval, the sound echoing off stone walls. Not surrender, not retreat, defiance. As the crowd dispersed to final preparations, Helen approached Marcus. Her expression was unreadable. I was wrong about her. Helen's voice was quiet enough that only Marcus could hear. About Claire, she's not here to destroy this pack. She's ready to die for it. She's ready to fight for it, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Helen smiled slightly. Either way, she's earned my respect and my support. When this is over, if we're still standing, I'll advocate for her as Luna. She's proven herself. Thank you. Marcus felt something tight in his chest ease. That means more than you know. Don't thank me yet. Helen's expression turned grim. We've still got to survive the night. Dusk fell like a curtain, painting the world in shades of gray and shadow. Marcus stood at the primary defensive position, Wade on his right, Claire on his left. Around them, the pack waited in disciplined silence, every wolf in position, every weapon ready. The forest was too quiet. Birds had stopped singing an hour ago. Animals fled. Nature knew what humans sometimes forgot. Predators were coming and everything with sense was getting clear. Movement. Wade's voice came through the radio, calm, despite the adrenaline Marcus could smell rolling off his battle buddy. South perimeter, multiple contacts, advancing in standard wedge formation. Here we go. Marcus keyed his own radio. All positions, weapons tight, wait for my command. The first wave of rogues emerged from tree line like ghosts made solid. Marcus counted fast. 30 visible, probably more in reserve. They moved with military precision, no wasted motion, every wolf covering others in textbook small unit tactics. Kane trained them well. Claire's voice was steady beside him, her sniper rifle already tracking targets. They're using fire team bounds. 3-man teams leapfrogging forward. Professional infantry doctrine. Can you disrupt it? Marcus scanned for priority targets. Watch. Claire's rifle cracked once, sharp and clean. 800 meters out, a rogue leading the left flank dropped with a neat hole through his skull. The formation wavered, wolves looking for the threat they couldn't see. Claire fired again, another leader down. The formation lost cohesion, rogues bunching up as fear overrode training. Now, Marcus gave the order. Spring the traps. Wade triggered the claymores. Anti-personnel mines erupted along the rogues' advance route, ball bearings scything through packed bodies with devastating effect. Screams cut through the evening air, blood-painted grass and stone. The rogues who survived the mines found themselves in a kill zone, caught between pack positions with no cover and nowhere to run. Marcus's wolves opened fire, disciplined shots finding targets with the efficiency of people fighting for everything they loved. The first wave broke, survivors fleeing back to treeline, dragging wounded. Marcus assessed damage. 4 rogues dead from Claire's sniper fire, 8 from the claymores, 5 more from follow-up shooting. 17 down out of 30 in less than 3 minutes. But the cost wasn't one-sided. 2 of his wolves were injured, 1 seriously. The pack healer was already working, hands steady despite the chaos. That was recon. Wade reloaded, eyes never leaving the tree line. They were testing our response time and defensive depth. Next wave will be heavier. He was right. The second assault came 10 minutes later, from 2 directions simultaneously, 40 rogues hitting south and east perimeters at once. Classic hammer and anvil, trying to split defensive focus. Marcus made the call. South positions fall back to secondary line, east holds and flanks. His wolves moved with the discipline Wade had drilled into them, abandoning the primary positions in good order, setting more traps as they withdrew. The rogues pursuing south ran into tripwires that triggered flares, bright magnesium light that turned dusk into noon and destroyed night vision. Blinded rogues made easy targets. Pack members picked them off from prepared positions, and the southern assault stalled. On the eastern front, Claire's tactical genius showed. She'd positioned defenders in a reverse L shape, letting rogues penetrate what looked like a weak point, then hitting them from 2 sides at once. Rogues found themselves surrounded, cut off from support, dying in a kill pocket they'd walked into blind. Second wave repelled. Casualties for the rogues climbed past 30. Pack losses remained minimal. 3 injured, none dead. They were winning. But Marcus knew this wasn't sustainable. Kane had numbers and could afford to trade blood for information. Every engagement taught him more about pack defensive capabilities, and he'd adjust tactics accordingly. They need to change tactics. Claire reloaded her rifle with practiced efficiency. Kane's too smart to keep feeding wolves into established kill zones. He'll probe for weakness somewhere we're not watching. Where? Marcus scanned the perimeter map, trying to think like an enemy commander. Before Claire could answer, alarms shrieked from the north. The bunker, the evacuation point where children and non-combatants sheltered. Marcus felt ice flood his veins. No, that can't be right. The northern approach is all swamp and heavy forest. Impossible to move large forces through without being detected. Unless you know the terrain. Wade's voice was grim. Unless you've got someone who already scouted approach routes. Claire's face went white. When I first arrived, I mapped the whole territory. Every approach, every weakness. It's what intelligence officers do. The northern swamp has a path, game trail that's navigable if you know exactly where to step. Did you ever mention that path to anyone? I put it in my initial assessment report. Standard security review. Claire's hands trembled. Oh God, if Kane got hold of that report somehow, if he has access to pack files, he'd know exactly how to hit us where we're weakest. Marcus was already moving, Wade and Claire right behind. All positions. Converge on northern bunker. Emergency speed. But even as they ran, Marcus knew they were too late. Kane had been playing a longer game, using the frontal assaults to fix pack forces in place while a strike team infiltrated from the undefended north. Classic special operations tactics. And they'd walked right into it. The bunker entrance stood open when they arrived, no sign of struggle visible from outside. But inside, the evidence was clear. Overturned furniture. Blood on walls, not enough to mean deaths, but enough to show violence. And most damning, empty rooms where 15 children and their caretakers should have been sheltering. Gone. All of them. Taken without enough fight to draw attention during the southern battles. Claire's scream of rage and grief echoed off concrete walls. She dropped to her knees, hands finding a small shoe that had been left behind. Ethan's shoe. The one Marcus had bought him 3 months ago. On the ground, a note written in marker on scrap cloth. The handwriting was adult, but the message had clearly been dictated by someone small and scared. Come alone to the clearing at midnight. Bring the children's families, and I kill one every hour. Bring soldiers, and they all die. Come yourself, unarmed, and I'll let them go. You for them. Fair trade. At the bottom, forced signature in a child's shaky hand. Mom. Ethan had called Claire Mom. Had signed a ransom note with that acknowledgement of bond, knowing it would hurt her more than any threat to his own life. The tactical thinking she'd taught him turned into psychological weapon by Kane. Marcus pulled Claire to her feet, held her while she shook with fury and fear. We'll get them back. I have to go. Claire's voice was hollow. He has 15 children. I can't let them die because of me. You can't trust him to honor the exchange. Wade joined them, his expression carved from stone. Men like Kane don't release hostages. They use them until they're not useful anymore. Then what do you suggest? Claire rounded on him. We assault? Storm whatever position he's holding them? How many kids die in the crossfire? The question hung unanswered because they all knew the math. Hostage rescue had terrible odds even with trained units and good intelligence. Trying it with civilian wolves against professional mercenaries was suicide. Unless, Marcus felt pieces clicking together in his mind, tactical problems shifting from impossible to merely desperate. Unless we give Kane what he wants. Claire, alone and unarmed, but not helpless. What are you thinking? Wade's eyes narrowed. I'm thinking we use Claire as a Trojan horse. Marcus looked at his mate, saw understanding dawn in her scarred face. She goes in unarmed like Kane demands, but she's not planning to stay prisoner. She's gathering intelligence, finding the children, creating opportunity for extraction. And how does she signal when she's ready? Claire asked. Kane will be watching for any communication. You don't signal. Marcus met her eyes. You make the opportunity and we're already in position to exploit it. Wade and I take a strike team, infiltrate close to whatever position Kane's using. The moment he makes a mistake, shows weakness, we hit hard and fast. This is insane. Claire's laugh held no humor. You're talking about violating every rule of hostage negotiation. I'm talking about ignoring rules written by people who never had to rescue their own children from mercenaries who've already proven they'll kill civilians. Marcus held her gaze. Standard doctrine doesn't apply here. We need to think like Kane. Tactical, ruthless, willing to take risks that sane people won't. Wade nodded slowly. It could work. Kane expects Claire to be afraid, compliant. He won't expect her to be gathering intelligence for a rescue operation. And if it doesn't work, Claire asked quietly, if he kills me before you can move, then we storm his position and save the children anyway. Marcus's voice was iron. But I'm betting Kane wants to gloat first, wants to make you watch while he proves you lost. Men like that, they can't resist the theater. And theater takes time. Time we use to position for the kill. Claire studied his face for a long moment. You're asking me to walk into hell trusting you'll pull me out. I'm asking you to trust that I won't leave you there. Marcus took her hands. We're in this together. You don't face Kane alone, not really. I'm with you every step. The mate bond pulsed between them, carrying emotions too complex for words. Fear, yes, but also fierce determination and the absolute certainty that they would not let Kane win. Okay, Claire's voice steadied. Okay, let's do this, but we do it smart. Wade, you take the strike team. Marcus, you stay with main defensive force. If this is diversion for another assault, Pack needs you here. Number Marcus's alpha command made the word absolute. I'm going after my son. That's not negotiable. Then we all go. Wade checked his weapon. Strike team of 3. Small, fast, deadly. We shadow Claire in, wait for opening, execute rescue. Simple. Simple. Claire's laugh was bitter. Nothing about this is simple, but it was the only plan they had. Part 2 ends with the impossible choice in time running out. Midnight approached with the inevitability of artillery fire. Claire stood at the edge of Pack territory, wearing civilian clothes with no weapons visible, looking exactly like what Kane expected. A broken woman trading herself for children she'd come to love. The performance had to be perfect, because 15 lives depended on her convincing a man who'd spent years learning to read deception. Marcus and Wade were shadows somewhere in the darkness, invisible even to Claire's trained awareness. The plan was simple in the way that all desperate plans were simple. Claire walked into Kane's trap. The strike team followed at distance, unseen and unheard. When opportunity presented itself, they exploited it with overwhelming violence. Clean, professional, the kind of operation that either worked perfectly or failed catastrophically with no middle ground. Claire's radio earpiece was so small it was nearly invisible, tucked deep in her ear canal. One-way communication only. She could hear Marcus breathing, steady and controlled, but couldn't respond without giving away the deception. Just knowing he was there, close enough to matter, made the fear manageable. The clearing Kane had chosen for the exchange sat in a natural depression, surrounded by higher ground that gave tactical advantage to anyone holding the perimeter. Smart positioning, professional. Claire cataloged details as she approached. 3 guards visible on the high ground, probably more hidden. Campfire in the clearing's center, creating light that would destroy her night vision while leaving the perimeter in shadow. Classic ambush setup. And in the firelight, 15 small shapes huddled together. Children. Claire's heart clenched at the sight of Ethan among them, his gray eyes tracking her approach with the focused awareness she'd taught him. No tears, no panic, just tactical assessment. Good boy. Stay smart. Kane stepped into the light, and Claire felt recognition slam into her chest like fist. He looked exactly as she remembered from grainy intelligence photos. Tall, powerfully built, with the kind of casual confidence that came from years of surviving what killed lesser men. His eyes were dark, unreadable, and they fixed on Claire with intensity that made her skin crawl. The Whisperer. His voice carried the faint accent of someone who'd learned English as second language, but spoke it fluently. After all these years, we finally meet properly, not through rifle scope, not across battlefield, face to face. Claire stopped 10 feet away, maintaining distance while showing she wasn't afraid to get close. You have something that belongs to me. Do I? Kane smiled, the expression holding no warmth. Interesting choice of words. These children belong to the pack that harbored you. You're just the Omega who teaches them tactics and pretends maternal instinct. I'm the one you wanted. Claire kept her voice level. Here I am. Let them go. Of course, eventually. Kane circled her slowly, predator assessing prey. But first we talk. You owe me that much. You killed my brother. My pack brother. The man who taught me everything about warfare and survival. And you did it from 800 meters away like a coward. I did it from 800 meters away like a professional. Claire turned to track his movement. Rashid built bombs that killed American soldiers. I eliminated a threat. That's not murder. That's war. War. Kane laughed, bitter and sharp. You Americans always hide behind that word. War justifies everything, doesn't it? Invasion, occupation. Killing men in their own country because they dare to fight back. Your brother killed 12 members of my team. Claire felt old anger rise. Good soldiers. People with families who loved them. He wasn't defending his homeland. He was selling explosives to the highest bidder. There's no honor in that. And there's honor in what you did? Kane stopped circling, faced her directly, hunting him for months, crossing borders, violating sovereignty, executing him without trial or due process. You're no different than the insurgents you claim to fight. The argument was designed to rattle her, make her emotional and stupid. Claire recognized the psychological operation because she'd run similar ops herself. Kane didn't care about his brother's death beyond what leverage it gave him. This was about establishing dominance, proving she was weak. You're right. Claire's admission surprised him. She saw it in the fractional widening of his eyes. What I did was extra-legal, probably criminal under international law, and I'd do it again tomorrow because it stopped him from killing more people. That's the difference between us. You justify violence with rhetoric about homeland and honor. I own what I am, a killer who made hard choices and lives with the consequences. Kane studied her for a long moment, recalibrating. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A broken woman begging for mercy? Something like that. Kane smiled again. The intelligence report said you suffered from PTSD with survivor's guilt, that you'd been medically discharged as psychologically unstable. I thought leverage over children would make you compliant, but you're not broken at all, are you? I'm plenty broken. Claire met his eyes steadily. I just don't let it stop me from doing what needs doing. In the darkness beyond the firelight, Marcus listened to the exchange through his earpiece and fought the urge to move too soon. Claire was buying time, gathering intelligence, but every word from Kane's mouth made Marcus want to put bullets through the smug bastard's skull. Wade touched his arm, silent reminder to stay patient. They were positioned 300 meters out, prone in heavy brush that concealed them from Kane's sentries. Between them and the clearing lay open ground that would have to be crossed at speed when the moment came. Timing would be everything. Marcus forced himself to think tactically. Count the guards. Assess weapons. Map escape routes. Standard pre-mission protocol that kept emotions from fouling tactics. 6 guards visible now, probably 8 total, all armed with rifles. Disciplined positioning with overlapping fields of fire. Professional setup that would make frontal assault suicidal. But they were watching outward, alert for rescue forces approaching from packed territory. They weren't watching the children closely. That was their mistake. Kane was so confident in his psychological hold over Claire that he'd underestimated the tactical training she'd given Ethan. Marcus keyed his radio, 2 clicks, signaled to the 3rd member of their strike team, positioned on the opposite side of the clearing. Helen, the former Army nurse, had insisted on coming, argued that they needed someone who could treat wounded children under fire. Marcus had agreed because Helen had combat experience from Vietnam and steady hands that age hadn't diminished. 3 clicks came back. Helen was in position. Now they waited for Claire to create opportunity. Back in the clearing, Kane gestured toward the huddled children. Here's what happens next. You and I are going to have a conversation about payment for my brother's life. These children remain unharmed as long as you cooperate. Resist, and I start killing them one by one while you watch. What do you want? Claire's voice stayed steady. Information. Kane pulled out a tablet, showed her satellite imagery of packed territory. Your new Alpha's defensive positions, numbers, capabilities. Everything you learned during your time here. You give me complete intelligence package, I let the children go. And me? You come with us. Kane's smile turned predatory. Rashid always said you were the best intelligence officer he'd faced. Said your psychological operations were flawless. I could use someone with your skills. So this isn't about revenge. Claire studied the tablet. This is recruitment. Why not both? Kane's voice held dark amusement. You killed my brother. I take you away from people you've come to love. Fair trade. And I get valuable asset in the process. Everyone wins except the Alpha, who loses his Omega and his tactical advisor in one night. Claire pretended to consider, let seconds tick past while she memorized guard positions and assessed weaknesses in Kane's setup. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, I'll give you the intelligence. But first I need to know the children are really okay. Let me check on them. Kane's eyes narrowed. Suspicious. Why? Because if you've hurt them, there's no deal. Claire made her voice hard. I don't negotiate with people who torture children. Let me verify they're unharmed, then we talk business. The logic was sound enough that Kane couldn't refuse without revealing weakness. He gestured permission. 2 minutes. Any tricks and my guards open fire. Claire crossed to where the children huddled together, their small faces pale in the firelight. She knelt slowly, hands visible and non-threatening, and Ethan immediately crawled to her. Mom, his voice was whisper quiet, are you really giving up? Never. Claire pulled him into a hug that concealed her mouth from Kane's view. She spoke directly into Ethan's ear, words so soft only werewolf hearing could catch them. Your dad is here, 300 meters out at 9 o'clock. When I give signal, you and the other kids run toward him. Don't stop. Don't look back. Understand? Ethan nodded against her shoulder. What's the signal? You'll know it when you see it. Claire pulled back, met his eyes. Remember what I taught you. Be smart, be fast, trust your training. She moved through the other children, checking for injuries, offering quiet reassurance. None were hurt beyond superficial bruising. Kane had kept them in good condition, probably because harming them would reduce their value as leverage. Another tactical calculation in a man who viewed everything through lens of advantage. 2 minutes elapsed. Claire returned to Kane, her assessment complete. They're okay, let's talk. Kane pulled up detailed maps on the tablet. Start with defensive positions. Primary lines, fallback points, strong points. Claire began reciting information, feeding Kane mixture of truth and misdirection that would sound plausible to someone without first-hand knowledge. She confirmed positions he probably already knew from reconnaissance, invented weaknesses that didn't exist, overestimated defensive strength in areas that were actually vulnerable. And while she talked, she watched the guards, noted how they relaxed fractionally as minutes passed without incident, saw attention drift from immediate perimeter to distant tree line. Human nature, boredom eroding vigilance, the opening she needed. In the darkness beyond the firelight, Marcus listened to the exchange through his earpiece and fought the urge to move too soon. Claire was buying time, gathering intelligence, but every word from Kane's mouth made Marcus want to put bullets through the smug bastard's skull. Wade touched his arm, silent reminder to stay patient. They were positioned 300 meters out, prone in heavy brush that concealed them from Kane's sentries. Between them and the clearing lay open ground that would have to be crossed at speed when the moment came. Timing would be everything. Marcus forced himself to think tactically. Count the guards, assess weapons, map escape routes. Standard pre-mission protocol that kept emotions from fouling tactics. 6 guards visible now on the perimeter ridge, spaced at intervals that gave overlapping fields of fire. Probably 2 more hidden in reserve. All armed with military-grade rifles, not the improvised weapons most rogues carried. Professional equipment for professional soldiers. The defensive setup was textbook. High ground advantage. Clear fields of fire into the kill zone below. Escape routes covered. If this were a training exercise, Marcus would have given it high marks for tactical soundness. But it also had weaknesses. Any competent defense did. The trick was finding them before the assault started. Wade had already identified the key vulnerability. The guards were focused outward, watching for rescue forces approaching from packed territory to the south and east. They weren't watching the northern approach, the swamp side where terrain made infiltration difficult but not impossible. And they definitely weren't watching the children closely, confident that Kane's psychological hold over Claire would keep the hostages compliant. That confidence would kill them. Marcus keyed his radio, 2 clicks, signaled to the 3rd member of their strike team, positioned on the opposite side of the clearing. Helen. The former Army nurse had insisted on coming, argued that they needed someone who could treat wounded children under fire. Marcus had agreed because Helen had combat experience from Vietnam and steady hands that age hadn't diminished. She was old, yes, but age hadn't stolen the competence she'd earned in field hospitals, where hesitation meant Americans died. 3 clicks came back. Helen was in position, her ancient M14 rifle probably older than some of the guards she'd be shooting, but maintained with the obsessive care of someone who understood that equipment failure in combat was death sentence. Now they waited for Claire to create opportunity. The minutes stretched like hours. Marcus watched Claire work Kane, feeding him intelligence that sounded plausible, but would lead any assault force into carefully prepared ambushes. She was good, better than good. Her psychological operations training evident in every word, every gesture, calculated to make Kane feel he was winning, while she positioned pieces for checkmate. Wade shifted slightly, Breath controlled, and even despite the adrenaline Marcus could smell rolling off his battle buddy. They'd done this before. Different war, different enemy, but the fundamentals never changed. Wait for the moment, exploit the opening, execute with overwhelming violence, get out before enemy could respond. Marcus's muscles coiled, ready to spring. His finger rested outside the trigger guard of his suppressed rifle, safety off, first round chambered. 50 meters of open ground to cross, 20 seconds at sprint speed, then close quarters battle where every shot had to count because missing meant dead children. The mate bond thrummed between him and Claire, carrying her focused calm across the distance. She was afraid, yes, but functioning through it with discipline, born of years operating in places where fear was just another environmental factor to account for. Marcus felt fierce pride alongside the terror. His mate, his warrior, his partner in every way that mattered. Wade touched his arm again, pointed. Guard at 2 o'clock had turned his back to light a cigarette, the glow of the ember destroying his night vision. 30-second window of reduced visibility on that sector. If they were going to move, now was the time. Marcus scanned the other guard positions. The one at 10 o'clock was checking his phone, attention divided. The one at 12 was yawning, bored with sentry duty that had stretched for hours without incident. Human nature asserting itself even in professional soldiers. Vigilance couldn't be maintained at peak indefinitely. Eventually, biology demanded rest. These men were good, but they weren't perfect. And perfect was what you needed to stop 3 special operations veterans executing a rescue mission. Marcus keyed the radio. 3 clicks. Execute. He and Wade rose from concealment like ghosts given form, their bodies low and fast, covering 300 meters in less than 20 seconds. Werewolf speed combined with special operations training, the kind of movement that looks supernatural to anyone who'd never seen elite soldiers operate. They hit the perimeter from the guard's blind side, Marcus's rifle coming up smooth and fast. 2 suppressed shots. Foot, foot. The guard at 2 o'clock dropped with neat holes through his skull, his cigarette falling from dead fingers. Wade took the one at 10 o'clock with similar precision, the phone slipping from nerveless hands to shatter on stone. Helen moved simultaneously from the opposite side, her M14 accounting for the guard at 12 with single shot that spoke of decades of marksmanship practice. The old rifle's report was louder than the suppressed weapons, no way to silence a battle rifle built in 1962, but by the time remaining guards reacted, the strike team was already inside their perimeter. 4 guards down in less than 3 seconds. The remaining 4 spun toward threats they couldn't immediately identify, trying to acquire targets in darkness that suddenly contained wolves who knew how to use shadow-like weapon. Their training kicked in, professional soldiers responding to ambush with disciplined fire, but they were shooting at positions the strike team had already abandoned. Marcus put rounds through guard at 8 o'clock position, watched him drop, and immediately shifted to new target. Wade and Helen engaged the others with the smooth coordination of people who'd fought enough battles to make violence into art form. No wasted shots, no panic, just professional soldiers executing mission with lethal efficiency. The firefight lasted 8 seconds. When it ended, all 8 guards lay dead or dying, and the strike team had taken 0 casualties. Clean, professional, the kind of operation that either worked perfectly or failed catastrophically, and this time the dice had rolled favorable. And in the clearing below, Claire heard the distinctive foot of suppressed gunfire and moved into action that would determine whether 15 children lived or died. She'd positioned herself next to the campfire during the intelligence briefing, close enough that Kane had relaxed into thinking she was compliant. Now she grabbed burning wood from the fire and flung it directly into Kane's face. He jerked back with roar of pain and fury, temporarily blinded. "Run!" Claire's shout rang across the clearing. "Ethan, now!" The children scattered like startled birds. Ethan led them using the exact escape route Claire had described, heading toward where Marcus was cutting through the remaining guards with brutal efficiency. Kane recovered faster than Claire expected, his hand clamping around her throat with crushing force. "You stupid bitch. You think this changes anything? I think you're about to have a very bad day." Claire drove her knee into his groin, using the joint locks and pressure points that Army hand-to-hand combat training had burned into muscle memory. Kane grunted, loosened his grip fractionally. It was enough. Claire twisted out of his hold, swept his leg, dropped him hard onto his back. She was moving for his weapon when something massive hit her from the side. Another rogue, bigger than Kane, slammed her into the ground with enough force to crack ribs. Pain exploded through her chest. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The rogue's jaws opened wide, going for her throat. Gunfire. 3 rapid shots. The rogue collapsed, dead weight pinning her down. Marcus was there, shoving the body aside, pulling Claire to her feet. "You good?" His hands checked her for serious injury, even as his eyes scanned for new threats. "Ribs," Claire gasped. "Maybe broken. I can move." "Then move." Marcus thrust a pistol into her hands. "Get to the children. We'll handle Kane." "Where is he?" Claire spun, weapon up. "Gone." Marcus's voice was grim. Bastard used the chaos to slip away. The clearing was carnage. 8 of Kane's guards lay dead or dying. The children had reached Helen's position, were being hustled towards safety under the older woman's fierce protection. Wade was securing the perimeter, checking bodies, making sure no threats remained. But Kane had vanished into darkness like smoke. "We need to pursue." Claire started toward the tree line. Marcus caught her arm. "No, we got what we came for. The kids are safe. That's the win." "He's still out there." Claire's voice held frustrated fury. "He'll regroup. Come back. As long as he's alive, this isn't over. Then we'll deal with him when he does." Marcus pulled her close despite her cracked ribs, careful of the injury. "Tonight we got our son back. That's enough." Claire wanted to argue, but the adrenaline was fading, leaving behind pain and exhaustion that made her knees weak. Marcus was right. Mission complete. Extract now, worry about loose ends later. They reached Helen's position to find all 15 children accounted for, frightened but alive. Ethan broke away from the group and crashed into Claire, hard enough to make her gasp with pain from the ribs. She didn't care. Her arms came around him automatically, holding tight. "You came." Ethan's voice was muffled against her shoulder. "I knew you would." "Of course I came." Claire kissed the top of his head. "I'll always come for you." Marcus joined the embrace, his arms around both of them, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, their family, damaged and unconventional, but theirs, whole. Wade's voice cut through the moment. "We need to move. This location is compromised, and Kane might have reinforcements." The trek back to pack territory took 2 hours, moving carefully through darkness with children who were exhausted and scared. Marcus carried the youngest ones. Claire and Helen took turns with the others. Wade covered their rear, weapon ready for pursuit that never materialized. They reached pack borders as dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Wolves emerged from defensive positions to greet them, howls of relief and joy echoing across the territory. The healer took charge of the children immediately, checking for injuries beyond the superficial. All 15 were remarkably unharmed physically. Psychological trauma was another matter, but that would reveal itself in time. Claire let the healer examine her ribs, wincing as competent hands probed damaged tissue. 3 cracked, maybe 4. "You're lucky they didn't puncture a lung." "I'm lucky for lots of reasons." Claire looked across the medical tent to where Marcus stood with Ethan, the boy refusing to leave his father's side. "Lucky to have found them. Lucky to have survived. Lucky to have a second chance at something that mattered." The healer bound her ribs tightly, offered pain medication that Claire refused. She needed to be sharp for what came next, because Kane was still out there, still a threat, and until that was resolved, nobody was truly safe. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight they'd won. The children were home. The pack was intact. And standing in the medical tent watching Marcus hold their son, Claire felt the mating bond pulse between them with warmth that had nothing to do with pain medication. After, they'd promised each other. After they survived, after they won, and they had. The formal mating ceremony happened 3 days later, giving Claire's ribs time to heal enough that breathing didn't feel like being stabbed. The pack gathered in the Great Hall, every member present to witness their alpha bind himself to the Omega who'd saved their children. Helen officiated, her voice carrying the weight of tradition and authority. Before this pack, before the moon that watches over us all, Marcus Thorne and Claire Ashford come to seal the mating bond that connects them. Claire wore simple dress in pack colors, her scars on full display. She'd refused to hide them, refused to pretend she was anything other than what she was. Wounded warrior, tactical genius, survivor of fire and loss who'd found a way to keep fighting. Marcus stood beside her in formal alpha vestments, looking every inch the leader he was. But his eyes, when they met Claire's, held only the man beneath the title. The broken Marine who'd lost his mate and found hope again in the most unexpected place. Do you, Marcus Thorne, take Claire Ashford as your mate, to bond with her completely, to share her burdens, to stand beside her through whatever challenges come? Helen's voice rang clear. I do. Marcus's voice was steady, absolute. She's already mine in every way that matters. This just makes it official. And do you, Claire Ashford, take Marcus Thorne as your mate, to bond with him completely, to share his burdens, to stand beside him through whatever challenges come? Claire felt the mating bond thrumming between them, waiting for completion. Felt the weight of the pack's eyes on her. Felt Ethan's small hand squeeze hers where he stood as witness. This was forever. This was choosing to risk everything again after losing it all before. I do. The words came out strong. He gave me a home when I had nothing. Gave me purpose when I'd lost my way. Gave me a son to love. How could I not choose this? Then by the authority vested in me and recognized by this pack, I declare you mated. Helen smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her usual stern expression. Seal the bond. Marcus's bite came swift and sure, his teeth marking Claire's throat where everyone could see the claim. The mating bond snapped into place fully, connection slamming through Claire's consciousness with force that made her gasp. She could feel Marcus, not just emotionally but fundamentally. His thoughts tangling with hers, his strength becoming hers, his love wrapping around her damaged pieces like bandages on old wounds. She bit him in return, marked him as thoroughly as he'd marked her, tasted his blood and his essence and his absolute commitment to this bond. The connection completed became unbreakable, and Claire felt tears track down her scarred cheeks. The pack howled approval, sounds shaking the rafters. Marcus pulled Claire close, kissed her with tenderness that made her forget the ribs still healing, the danger still lurking. Everything except this moment of choosing each other. Ethan crashed into them both, his arms wrapping around their legs. My family. His voice held wonder. Complete. Complete, Marcus agreed, one hand on his son's head, the other around his mate's waist. Whatever comes next, we face it together. What came next was 4 months of relative peace. Cain had vanished after the failed exchange, his mercenary pack scattering to avoid pack justice. Intelligence suggested he'd fled back to Pakistan, was regrouping and planning. But for now, Marcus's pack was safe. Claire took her place as Luna, using her tactical expertise to revolutionize pack security and training. She established intelligence networks, created defensive protocols that assumed enemies would be professional soldiers rather than random rogues, taught pack members to think strategically, to use their brains as effectively as their strength. Ethan thrived under the stability. The nightmares decreased. The feral edge smoothed away completely. He became the boy he should have been from the start. Confident, curious, capable. He helped Claire train younger children, passing on the tactical thinking that had saved his life. And Marcus led with the steady competence of someone who'd found balance between duty and personal happiness. He was alpha, yes, responsible for pack welfare and security, but he was also mate and father, and those roles informed each other in ways that made him better at both. The bond between him and Claire deepened daily. They learned each other's rhythms, how to communicate without words through the connection they shared, how to fight together with the synchronized precision of people who thought as one unit, how to love despite the damage they both carried. Wade watched it all with satisfaction that came from seeing his battle buddy finally whole again. Helen softened, became advocate rather than skeptic, using her influence to elevate other Omegas within pack hierarchy. 4 months of peace, of healing, of building something stronger from the ashes of what had burned. And then Cain came back. The attack came at dawn, precisely timed to catch the pack between night shift change and day operations. 60 mercenary wolves hit from 4 directions simultaneously, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer numbers and tactical coordination that spoke of months of planning. But this time the pack was ready. Claire's intelligence network had tracked Cain's movements for weeks, knew he was massing forces for another attempt. Intercepted communications suggested he'd recruited from 3 different mercenary packs, promised them triple payment for one final assault that would break Marcus's pack and prove that Cain's defeat had been fluke rather than tactical superiority. She'd use that intelligence to prepare defenses that turned Cain's numerical advantage into liability. Positioned defensive reserves at exactly the right locations, pre-sighted artillery coordinates for every likely approach, created killing grounds that would channel attacking forces into prepared positions where pack defenders held every advantage. The first wave hit the southern perimeter with textbook infantry assault, suppressing fire from heavy weapons, maneuver elements advancing under cover, coordination that would have overwhelmed most wolf packs in minutes. But Marcus's pack had been drilled relentlessly by Wade and Claire, trained to fight as organized military unit rather than individual warriors. Pack defenders let the first wave penetrate outer defenses, falling back in good order to secondary positions exactly as planned. The mercenaries, smelling victory, pressed the pursuit and walked directly into overlapping fields of fire from positions they hadn't identified during reconnaissance. The killing was methodical, disciplined, pack members firing from prepared positions that gave cover and concealment, targeting mercenaries caught in open ground with nowhere to hide. The southern assault stalled, then broke, survivors retreating under cover of smoke that did nothing to hide their thermal signatures from defenders equipped with night vision. But the southern attack was diversion. While pack forces engaged there, Kane launched his main effort from the west, hitting the supply depot that fed pack operations. 40 mercenaries against 10 defenders. The math should have been massacre. Except Claire had anticipated exactly this move. The supply depot was trapped. Defenders there were positioned in hardened bunkers with interlocking fields of fire. The supplies themselves were moved days ago, replaced with demolition charges triggered by remote detonator. Wade waited until mercenaries were fully committed, packed into the depot compound, chasing objective that didn't exist. Then he triggered the charges. The explosion was massive, rolling fireball that consumed everything in 50-meter radius. Bodies flew like ragdolls. The concussion knocked down mercenaries 200 meters away. 20 mercenaries died in that blast. The survivors broke and ran, assault shattered by violence they couldn't have anticipated. But Kane still had 20 fresh wolves in reserve, and he committed them now in desperate gambit. While the pack celebrated their tactical victories, while defenders relaxed fractionally thinking the battle won, Kane launched surgical strike at the command center. Small team, professional, moving with the kind of speed and precision that marked them as his best fighters. They infiltrated through the chaos of battle, using smoke and confusion as concealment, bypassed defensive positions focused outward toward retreating mercenaries, and breached the command center with explosive charges that blew the reinforced door off its hinges. Claire had seconds of warning, just enough to grab her weapon and take cover behind the tactical display table. The mercenaries poured through the breach, weapons up and scanning for targets, professional room clearing that left nowhere to hide. She dropped two with precise headshots before the others acquired her position. Return fire chewed through the table, splinters and electronic components exploding in shower of debris. Claire rolled left, came up firing, took down a third mercenary, but there were still 4 more, and she would pin down with no escape route. The lead mercenary moved to flank, his rifle tracking toward Claire's exposed position. She was out of options, out of time. This was how it ended, killed in headquarters while the battle raged outside. Then Marcus was there. The Alpha came through the breach like force of nature, his presence filling the room with raw power and fury. He hit the lead mercenary with shoulder check that sent the man flying into wall hard enough to crack concrete, spun and put rounds through 2 more before they could bring weapons to bear. Moved with economy of violence that spoke of years spent mastering close quarters battle. The 4th mercenary got a shot off, the round taking Marcus high in the shoulder. The Alpha didn't slow, didn't flinch, just closed distance and broke the mercenary's neck with single twist. The 5th tried to run, made it 3 steps before Claire's bullet found his spine. Silence filled the command center. Bodies everywhere, blood painting walls and floor. Marcus stood in the center of the carnage, blood running from his shoulder wound, breathing hard but steady. His eyes found Claire, checking for injury with intensity that made her chest tight. "You good?" His voice was rough, strained. "Better now." Claire moved to him, hands already assessing the shoulder wound. "You're hit." "Flesh wound." Marcus grabbed her hand, pulled her close despite the injury. Kane's getting desperate. That was his best team. They failed. Outside, the sounds of battle were fading. Mercenaries in full retreat now, their leadership broken, their assault shattered by tactical planning that had anticipated every move. Wade's voice came through the radio, tight with satisfaction. "We've won. They're running. Do we pursue?" Negative. Marcus keyed his radio. Let them go. Killing more won't accomplish anything. The message is sent. He turned to Claire, forehead resting against hers. We held. Again. We did. Claire felt tears track down her face, relief and exhaustion mixing in ways that made her knees weak. But Kane's still out there. This isn't over. Marcus pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Then we'll deal with him. Permanently. No more half measures. The Alpha had anticipated the move, positioned himself between Kane and Claire with cold certainty. You want her, you go through me. Kane smiled, blood on his teeth from earlier fighting. I was hoping you'd say that. They fought with the brutal efficiency of professional soldiers. No wasted motion, no theatrical displays, just violence applied with surgical precision. Kane was skilled, dangerous, carrying years of combat experience. But Marcus fought for something beyond survival. He fought for family, for home, for the woman who'd given him hope when darkness had been all he could see. The fight spilled from the command center into the main courtyard. Pack members and mercenaries both paused to watch their leaders clash. This was alpha combat, dominance asserted through superior skill and will. Marcus took damage, deep cuts, broken bones. But he gave worse than he got. And when Kane tried dirty tactics, tried to target Claire through Marcus, the Alpha's fury became something primal and unstoppable. He broke Kane's leg with calculated strike, shattered the mercenary's jaw with headbutt that split his own forehead open, kept fighting through blood loss and pain that should have dropped him. And when Kane finally fell, unable to rise, Marcus stood over him with killing blow chambered and ready. Yield or die, choose. Kane laughed, the sound bubbling through blood. You think this is over? Kill me, another takes my place. My pack will keep coming. Then I'll keep killing them. Marcus's voice was absolute. Until they learn that this territory, this pack, my mate, they're all off limits. However long it takes, however much it costs, I will protect what's mine. The declaration echoed across the battlefield. Kane's mercenaries, hearing their leader defeated, seeing the pack's unbreakable resolve, began falling back. The assault broke, shattered, became rout as mercenaries chose survival over contract payment. Kane struggled to rise, defiant to the last. Marcus could kill him, should kill him, end the threat permanently. But Claire's voice through the mate bond stopped him. We're better than that. Let him live with the defeat. Let him know he lost to people he thought were weak. Marcus stepped back. Let Kane live. Go. Tell whoever will listen that this pack doesn't break. That you came with 60 warriors and left with half that. Tell them the cost of challenging wolves who fight for family rather than money. Kane dragged himself upright, eyes holding hatred and grudging respect in equal measure. This isn't over. It is for today. Marcus turned his back deliberately, ultimate show of dominance. And that's enough. Kane retreated, his surviving mercenaries collecting him. They disappeared into the forest, defeated but alive. A message sent to anyone else who might consider Marcus's pack vulnerable. The pack had held. The aftermath was sobering. 12 pack members dead, 20 more seriously wounded. But they'd survived, held territory against professional soldiers through tactical brilliance and unbreakable will. Claire found Marcus in the medical tent, submitting to Helen's ministrations with poor grace. The Alpha's injuries were extensive but not life-threatening. Broken ribs, concussion, deep lacerations that would scar. He'd heal. You let him live? Claire settled beside him, careful of her own injuries from the battle. You asked me to. Marcus took her hand, threaded their fingers together. And you were right. Killing him would have made him a martyr. Letting him live with defeat is worse punishment. Still, Claire smiled slightly, very restrained of you. I'm learning. Marcus pulled her closer despite Helen's protests about his injuries. Learning that strength includes mercy, that winning doesn't always mean killing. You taught me that. We taught each other. Claire rested her head carefully on his uninjured shoulder. I taught you tactics. You taught me hope. They sat together while Helen worked, while the pack began cleaning up from battle, while the dead were honored and the injured were tended. Leaders who'd guided their people through impossible odds and emerged stronger for the trial. Ethan found them there an hour later, his young face smudged with dirt and streaked with tears he hadn't let fall during the fighting. Are you okay? We're okay. Marcus opened his arms and Ethan climbed into the embrace, careful of injuries. We're all okay. Did we win? Ethan's voice was small. We survived. Claire corrected gently. That's the only win that matters. The epilogue to their story unfolded over the next 3 years. Cain never returned, his reputation destroyed by the defeat. Other mercenary packs learned the lesson. Marcus's pack was off limits. Claire built the pack's intelligence network into something formidable, creating early warning systems that prevented future surprises. She trained the next generation of tactical thinkers, elevating Omegas into positions of real authority based on competence rather than rank. Ethan grew into a confident young man who spoke freely about his trauma and his healing, becoming advocate for other children dealing with loss and fear. At 11 years old, he ran junior tactical training sessions, teaching kids that intelligence was the ultimate weapon. Marcus led with the wisdom of someone who'd earned his position through trial and error. The pack thrived, grew, became known as a place where strength was measured by character rather than birthright. Helen lived to see her vision realized. Omega rights codified into pack law, positions of power distributed based on merit. She passed peacefully in her sleep 3 years after the final battle, surrounded by a pack that loved her. Wade remained Marcus's closest advisor, battle buddy who'd seen him through the worst and celebrated the best. He married late, found love with pack member who appreciated his dry humor and steady competence. And Claire, the scarred Omega who'd arrived broken and left whole, became legend. The Whisperer who'd transformed from psychological operations specialist to Luna to tactical revolutionary who proved that damage wasn't destiny. On the third anniversary of the mating ceremony, Marcus found her in the garden where it had all begun. The space where she'd first met Ethan, first taught him that fear could be transformed into strength, first felt the stirrings of connection that would save them both. Do you ever regret it? Marcus settled beside her on the bench, close enough that their shoulders touched, taking on a feral child and broken alpha, choosing this life. Claire thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fire that had scarred her, the team she'd lost, the months hunting Rashid through hostile territory, the moment she'd walked into this garden and seen a small boy who needed exactly what she could offer. Not once, her voice was firm, not ever, even when it was hard, even when I was scared, because all of it led here to you, to Ethan, to this pack, to being someone who matters. You always mattered. Marcus took her scarred hand in his. The fire didn't change that. No, but it changed me, made me someone who could recognize another broken person and see the possibility rather than just the damage. She leaned into him, comfortable and easy after 3 years of partnership. Made me someone who understands that scars don't make you less. They prove you survived. Ethan found them there as evening painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Now 11 years old and showing the first signs of the leader he'd become. He settled on Claire's other side, completing their family circle. Tell me the story again, Ethan said, though he'd heard it hundreds of times. About the garden, about the first day. Claire smiled, began the tale that never got old. About a boy too scared to trust and a woman too damaged to hope. About patience and tactical thinking and the slow building of connection across impossible distance. About learning that strength came in forms the world didn't always recognize. Marcus listened, his arm around his mate, his son leaning against her shoulder. This moment, this peace, this family forged from pain and patience and choosing each other every single day. This was what they'd fought for, what they'd bled for, what they'd survived everything to protect. 3 damaged people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful from the broken pieces. Not perfect, never perfect, but theirs, whole in ways that mattered. The moon rose over packed territory, silver light painting everything clean. In the garden where healing had begun, 3 wolves sat together. Alpha, Luna, Air, family who proved that love could conquer trauma, that tactical thinking could transform fear into power, that scars were just proof you were strong enough to survive. And in the distance, wolves howled to the moon, voices raised in celebration of home and pack and the unbreakable bonds that held them all together. The battle was over, the war was won, and in the space between violence and peace, they'd found what mattered most. Each other, home, hope, forever.